Alright guys, so today we're going to be learning about the zero product property. This is your homework for tonight. It needs to be done before we come back on Monday from break. So today's date is 2/10. Our title is Zero Product Property. Oops, there we go. Alright, so let's just quickly go over what it means to be a product. Alright, that's going to be an answer to a multiplication problem. I need to go to page 5. You need to write down whatever page number you need for your notes. Make sure we underline our title. Today is the 10th, 2016. Alright, so let's quickly go over our objective for today. Now that we know how to factor things, we can now use them to solve. Alright, so we learned how to solve equations back in Unit 2. Today we're going to combine factoring and solving. So our objective is I can solve for the zeros of a quadratic equation. So let's just quickly go over and make sure that we remember a quadratic has something squared. Usually it's an x. Alright, and zeros, we're going to talk about what that means today. So our zero product property it states that if the product of two or more numbers is 0, then at least one of them is 0, right? Let's think about anything. If we take 4 times 0, we get 0. If we take 10 times 0, we get 0. Even if we take a negative number and we multiply it by 0, we still get 0. Alright? So if we wrote that in algebra, then we usually say, this is the algebra way to express it, that AB equals 0. This is A times B, right? Because remember, product is an answer to multiplication problem. Alright, so if A times B equals 0, then we have a couple options. Then A equals 0 or B equals 0. What do you think about, could they both be 0? Yeah, or both equals 0, okay? So now we're going to apply it to quadratics. So we're going to do 3 examples, okay? So example number 1. We're going to start off with v squared plus 28 equals negative 11v. So I want to quickly see, this only applies if AB equals 0. Does it equal 0? Go ahead and pause the video and think about how can we make this equal 0. So we can add 11v to both sides. I'm not going to put it under either one because neither one are like terms. And that gives us v squared plus 11v plus 28 equals 0. So I have my quadratic term, my linear term, and my constant term. So I want you to pause the video and think about how could you factor this side. Alright, so if we multiply 1 times 28, we get 28. So I need to make my T-chart of my factors that multiply to 28 and add to 11. Well, I know 2 and 14. 3 doesn't go into 28. Well, these add up to 16, so I don't want those. 4 and 7, hey, they add up to 11. So I'm going to split this into 4 and 7v. So we've got v squared plus 4v plus 7v plus 28 equals 0. All right, and then remember that we're going to group the first two and last two and pull out the GCFs. So I get v is my GCF between these two. V plus 4 remains when we factor out the GCF. My GCF here is positive 7. I need to write that plus sign. And then if I factor it out, I'm left with v plus 4. Awesome. This is all still equal to 0. So now I know my factors are going to be v plus 4, and that second parentheses is v plus 7. I get it from my leading coefficients outside of the parentheses. So this equals 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each set of parentheses, all right? This is a factor, and this is a factor. We're going to set them each equal to 0. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to say v plus 4 equals 0. And then I'm going to set another line. I'm going to just put the next one next to it. So v plus 7 equals 0. So v, whatever v is, when we add 4 to it, we have to get 0. So we're going to do the inverse operations. V equals negative 4. So if we plug in negative 4, then this first parentheses would be 0. Well, how do we make this one equal 0? So we got to do our inverse operations, and we get v equals negative 7. So the answer to this question is v equals 4, or v equals negative 4, or v equals negative 7. It's got to be one of those. All right, so that was a more complicated example because we didn't have it set equal to 0. So let's just do a little bit easier one. Number 2, we have x squared minus 64 equals 0. So I'm going to do my check. Check first. Does it equal 0? Yes. So then we can just start factoring. If it doesn't, we have to make it equal 0. So I'm going to do 1 times negative 64 equals negative 64. I need two numbers that when I multiply, remember we have a 0 linear term. So when they add up, they need to sum up to 0. So they need to be opposites. So I could do 4 and 16. If I add those up, I get negative 12. That doesn't give me 0, so I don't want that. I do know that 8 and 8 are the same. And if I just make one of them negative, then positive times negative is negative. Positive 8 plus negative 8 equals 0. That's the one. So, x squared plus 8x minus 64 equals 0. Feel free to pause the video and try to figure out how to factor the rest of this. So we get x is our GCF, x plus 8 remains. What do you think the GCF of this one is? Negative 8. We need to include that negative. When we factor that out, we're left with a positive x, and then negative 64 divided by negative 8 is going to be positive 8. I have repeats in the parentheses, so I did this part right. So we're left with x plus 8. What goes in that second parentheses again? Our coefficients. X minus 8. Okay, I want you to pause the video and try to figure out what is our next step. We need to take x plus 8 and set that equal to 0 because that's in one parentheses. And then we're going to do that again for over here. So minus 8, and we're left with x equals negative 8 plus 8 plus 8. We're left with x equals positive 8. So those are my two answers. got to be one or the other. Okay. All right, we've got one more example to do, but I'm going to do a little bit less work because you guys know how to factor this. It's going to spread out just a little bit more. So we've got number 3. Okay, so we've got 5m squared minus 11m plus 6 equals 0. Okay, so does it equal 0? Yes. All right, so what we need to do now is figure out, I'm going to use the space over here, how to factor it. So go ahead and pause, try the problem on your own. Okay, so 5 times 6 is 30. I need two numbers that add to give me negative 11. Oh, hey, 5 and 6. So negative 5 and negative 6, because they need to add to give me negative 11. But two negatives multiply to give us a positive. So if I have 5m squared minus 5m minus 6m plus 6. All right, we're going to group the first two. My GCF here is 5m. If I factor that out, I'm left with 5. 5m divided by 5m. Oh, that's 1. GCF between these two, since our leading one is negative, I'm going to pull out that negative with the 6. If I factor this out, I'm left with m minus 1. I have repeats here, we're good. So, now we're left with m minus 1, 5m minus 6 equals 0. All right, what do you think is next? I'm going to use the space over here to say that m minus 1 equals 0. That's my first equation. Since I only have two parentheses, I'm only going to have, two groups of parentheses, I'm only going to have two equations. If I had a third group of parentheses, then I would need a third equation, because we need to set each factor equal to 0. So 5m minus 6, that equals 0 as well. All right, use our inverse operations. Pause the video, try it yourself. So m could be 1. Or m could be a fraction, 6 over 5. Both are legitimate answers. Alright guys, if any of that confused you, feel free to watch the video again. I strongly suggest doing that at least twice. We like to watch things 3 times. Once to copy down the notes, 2 to watch it again so we can catch anything we missed, and 3 to really just concretely understand the concept and make sure that you understand the whole idea. I hope you have a wonderful break.